Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. We are here, a bunch of us, for the 124th in a row Knowledge Bolide Hangout sponsored by Topherspin Meteorites. Today, we have the topic of Power of Provenance. And that may be a new word for you, but we're going to have Mike Kelly give his 101 deep dive into what provenance is. We're going to give you a few examples beforehand of what can be considered provenance. But the world of meteorites is ever exciting, and we just had some late breaking news. So we're going to throw it over to our good friend and Knowledge Bolide crew member, Roberto Vargas. He is in Georgia, and he just recovered the world's freshest meteorite.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, bud, how are you, man? Yeah, you're coming and going, but I'll edit around it. I understand you're taking a break from dinner.
Yes, yeah. So I'm down in Thomaston, Georgia. Dinner, a hunter's dinner. So we're at Longhorn Steakhouse, and just getting in from a long day's hunt.
And that smile on your face, my man, that tells me you kicked today's dog in the butt, didn't you? There it is.
Yeah.
Nice one.
That was in space 3 days ago.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about it, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't hear about it until rocks were already found.
Yeah, me neither. So it happened 3 days ago. Like I said, I didn't hear. I heard absolutely nothing about it. And then I saw Pat Branch post a rock yesterday. I was at like a town fair, and it was like 9:30 at night. And I look at my phone, and there's a meteorite in situ in Georgia, and I was like, I gotta go. So we rode the Ferris wheel, because that was like the last thing we had to do at the fair. I didn't get confirmation that my flight was booked until 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be at the airport by 5 to catch my flight. The flight left at 6. I got to Georgia at 10, and then I drove an hour and 40 minutes into the strewn field, and 10 minutes outside of the car, I spot my first rock.
Wow.
Nice.
That is
and
crazy.
I had actually walked past it, and then on my way back was when I saw it. So it was like, yeah.
You're glad you walked back.
Yeah. I'm really glad I walked back the same way I walked. I spent the rest of the day hunting, and then Mark Lyon and Matthew Stream are on their way in now.
Cool.
Oh, wow, really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, I actually have your slide up right now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's Roberto right there, bright and early.
Yep.
And Roberto, we're gonna respect that you're eating dinner, and we're gonna let you get back to that. But tell us a little bit about this find, as far as we're talking about provenance today. So when you're out in the field, this meteorite has no provenance. It does not exist until you discover it and say, hey there, sexy. So when you're out in the field hunting and buying fresh fallen stones, which is what you do, how do you, as a dealer and a collector yourself, how do you create provenance?
So provenance starts as soon as it's found, right? So it's really important to get in situ pictures, which are basically pictures right as the meteorite was found. And that's what I have. That's what this slide is right there. It's got a lighter for size, because I couldn't find my scale cube. Just as a size reference, so you know how big it is. It's basically the size of 3/4 of a big slider. And then so that's an important piece of provenance. If you buy a meteorite and it comes with an in situ photo, that adds value to your meteorites.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the next slide is me in Santa Filomena. So for the Georgia Fireball, Pat's post was the first thing that alerted me that there were meteorites on the ground. In Santa Filomena, the first thing that alerted me to the fact that there were meteorites on the ground in Brazil was a guy's video of a meteorite crashing through his roof. So
Yes,
this
I
is,
remember that, and we were like, "Is that
yeah,
fake or is that real?"
exactly. So I saw that video. I was pretty convinced it was real, so I headed out there, and this is me at that guy's house, and he is showing me the roof and where it impacted the bed. And on the last picture, the picture all the way to the right, is a fragment that I was able to acquire off of him, as well as a piece of the tile roof that was broke by impact.
So like going there and documenting the location, documenting the people whose life were physically impacted with this meteorite. What are we looking at in this? Because I didn't know if I should put these all together or not, but I see an impact hole.
So the first two photos are of the Pangor meteorite that fell in January of 2021, January 28th, I believe. So this is the gentleman who found the stone, and that is one of the holes that one of the stones was actually pulled out of.
Wow.
And then the third picture, the picture all the way on to the right, is the one of an example of dropping a pin and getting GPS coordinates, which is very important when documenting a fresh find, and it adds to the provenance. And remember, all of these things that we're doing here, we're talking about adding value by means of adding provenance. You know what I'm saying? So in the case of the Santa Filomena meteorite, okay, you can get a piece that says, you know, on the card it'll say, oh, this is a piece of the hammerstone, but that's not the same as having it on the card, having it documented, having pictures. You know, the whole package adds value. Provenance adds value.
Yeah, and that's from a collector's point of view, no doubt. Some of this documentation is required for science. If you want to have the meteorite, like this is Pungar, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a 1 of 1. So it's really, really intelligent and needed for science as well to take this note of the location and all this kind of stuff, and the story, the people, the names, the addresses, whatever you can get, because that further documents that it was a witness fall. I see these documents and I can read some of them.
Yeah. So basically, these are 2 original documents, and then the 2 documents in English, which I paid to have transcribed. And these are accounts from the source. So I'm not always finding meteorites, obviously. Sometimes I'm just buying meteorites. It's always good, if I can't recount the story, to have the person who did find it recount the story, or at least recount the transaction that led to me obtaining it, which is just, you know, that's a chain in the provenance. It goes that person, me, and now it's new owner if I decide to sell, you know?
I found these extremely interesting. I'm glad you included these, man.
Yeah,
that gives
absolutely.
it a real personal touch. Wow. Does the crew have any questions for Roberto? I think Pat does. Go for it, Pat.
You know, when we speak about adding value, we're adding value from an economic standpoint, but we're also adding value from a scientific standpoint by knowing exactly where they were found, and creating that whole cohesive story and all the physical evidence that allow the people on the nomenclature committee to feel good about giving this meteorite a name rather than Nova. or NWA or what have you.
Yeah,
Bruce,
absolutely. And I, I don't want to get too much into it because I know Mike Kelly has a great presentation in store for you guys. But I think of Provenance as a chain, right? And each owner is a link in that chain. So if you're the finder, you're that first link. It's your responsibility to get all that and keep it with the meteorite, even when you sell it. And then the next person becomes a link in that chain. And they are supposed to have their information and what they got from you as the seller. So that's, I think about that when I'm, out here hunting for meteorites, or when I'm buying meteorites, and not just when I'm buying meteorites in the field, even when I'm buying meteorites from some of the great dealers out there like Topher.
Thank you, Ben. Bruce, you're up next, buddy.
Okay, I actually had a question for Roberto.
What's up, Bruce?
Hey, so when you're finding them and you're pinning the location, are you including that location on the provenance card that you're providing?
Typically I do not. It's something that I would provide in the form of photos. So I'd provide a photo of the image on Google Earth with the basically what you saw on the other slide, an exact pin of where that piece was found.
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for joining us from the field, and congratulations on your find. Way to go, buddy. We're all really proud
Thank
of
you for having me.
Nice piece.
Great work, Roberto.
Congratulations.
All right,
Ben.
guys, enjoy the rest
Congratulations,
of the
man.
I wanted to congratulate Allison on becoming a new member of the IMCA.
Yes.
You should be getting that in the
Congratulations.
next couple of days.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're
Welcome
welcome.
to the
Have a
club.
good night, guys.
Wow, way to go. That is awesome. We are switching gears right now to a new, we're going to put hyphens on the member of the Knowledge Bolide. He's in training right now.
There you go.
This is Preston Allen decided to join us, and we're talking about provenance, and he has a very, very important stone that just fell on Earth and it just came into his possession, and provenance is very important with this. So Preston, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Tell us about your rock.
It's a pretty rock. No, so I was out on the field with all the guys for several days. I didn't end up finding one myself, but I had heard about a lot of the rocks being found. I was able to hold a handful of them from Pat, a different one from Sonny, the main mass that he found. And ultimately, I wanted one of these for myself. So I live probably about an hour south of where the fall happened. So I actually heard it and felt it from my house. And I got really excited. So I first found out that people were going out there when Roberto posted a picture on Facebook of him in an airplane, I think. And he said something along the lines of on the way to Utah. So I messaged him and hooked up with him and Matt. And then eventually Mark Lyon was out there as well. So I got a chance to hang out with all those guys, go out and find some, try to find some rocks. And again, ultimately, I decided that I needed to have this piece.
Right.
So yeah, it's really cool.
Let me interject for 1 second and just ask.
Yeah.
I kind of jumped right into you. Maybe you can tell us exactly, because I thought you were in a different state. So this is even cooler that this is like an hour south of you. How long have you been collecting? How long have you been hunting? Have you ever found a meteorite before?
So no, I've never found a meteorite. That was the first time I hunted for them. It's been something I would have liked to do for a while, but never had the opportunity and saw it here. I've been collecting for a couple years. It's always been an interest of mine, and then kind of realized that it wasn't all that difficult to own a piece of space. So as soon as I bought one, my first piece was a slice of the Chinga meteorite.
Yep.
And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever, and I had to have more.
Nice. Yeah.
Nice.
We have that.
Oh, but
we have that. Yeah. So what's I have it on the screen if you people can read English, but what's special about this particular, even though it's not classified yet, Great Salt Lake meteorite?
Yeah, not classified yet. That's still happening. It's underway at the Utah University of Utah, excuse me. But this piece was the very first one that was found. It was publicized on local news stations, and the other slice there is at the university being classified. So this is the piece that's getting classified here, and was the one that was on the news around here.
Nice.
That is
Very
really
nice.
cool. I remember seeing an interview with Sonny hand delivering this on the foil, and it's amazing to see the actual same rock, same stone, and it's fantastic, man.
Mhm.
That's
So
sweet.
That
you,
is.
you really can't get better provenance than having your meteorite on the news.
No, no.
It's true.
Yeah. And here's one thing I thought was really cool that you provided as well was this. A news article talking about the meteorite. The first meteorite found a picture of it in situ, and then an uncropped version directly from Sonny Clary the Finder.
Can't get much better
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
That's Sonny's trademark to have the dice. He uses a different scale cube than the rest of us do.
kind
Yeah.
of his mark, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. What else was there anything else that you wanted to share with us while we have you here, man?
No, not really at the moment. Other than it's really cool to hang out with you guys. I get really excited about this stuff, and man, there's just so much to learn. I'm still learning a lot about it. I mean, I'm sure everybody is. It seems like an infinite amount of knowledge when it comes down to meteorites. And
Yeah.
um,
How big is this one that you have?
so I think originally when it was found, it was 217. After the cut, the piece there that I have is 185.
Wow,
Nice.
it's gorgeous, man.
And I have some scale cubes coming in from Rex, but they're not
Mhm.
here yet. So you got to see the picture of it in a hand, and there's your reference for now.
Wow.
Cool.
That
Is this
is-
your first hunt?
Yes. Yeah. First time I
Can
went out
you-
hunting.
You went hunting with Roberto, right?
Yeah, we met up with Roberto, Matt, and Mark, and we all went out. Pat, so not the Pat here. Pat Branch was with us as
Branch.
well.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, I understand that. I teased about this a few weeks ago on the Tektite Hangout that just got put on YouTube. But some of the adventures out there didn't go as planned. You guys didn't have the best of luck and best of planning on at least one person. You can say it wasn't you, but tell us a little bit briefly what happened, what went wrong, and how the heck are you still with us?
So as soon as I found out Roberto was heading down, I figured, hey, do you know what? I live down here, got some resources. He asked if I had access to like a quad, a side by side. So basically, I put all that together. I was able to borrow a couple four-wheelers the first day that we went out, and we took them over some railroad tracks, turned them off, and it wouldn't start back up. So
Oh my God.
first day just didn't work out too well. And so we ended up walking out into the field. Again, not naming names, but someone made a little miscalculation of how far the strewn field was from the road,
Mhm.
and ended up being about 6 or 7 miles, I think, opposed to the 2 or 3 that we thought it was.
Oh boy.
Ouch.
Ouch.
And you got to think here as well that we're walking on a salt bed. It's it's just drying you up every moment.
Yeah.
So the first day we were lucky to make it back to the vehicle alive.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was pretty
I'm glad
rough.
you did.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because I'm very connected and people are giving me information about the hunt and everything. And it's funny that I know that you three were out there, that you were trying to flag down Sonny and his companion, both on ATVs.
No,
It
Robert,
wasn't-
Robert.
Yeah, Robert
Oh,
Ward.
Robert.
Sonny was in the
Yeah, okay.
helicopter.
Yeah, Robert Ward on his quads, and you weren't successful, but a helicopter flew over, and I actually was watching some footage of Sonny Clary in that helicopter flying over, and there's 3 people on the field, and he called out, there's 3 people standing out there. And I swear to God, if I didn't, immediately Sue and I reached out to Roberto and said, did a helicopter fly over while you guys were trying to flag down? He's like, yep. I'm like,
Oh, yeah, I asked Matt. And Matt
Yeah.
hadn't seen the footage yet. He was like, no way.
Oh,
I think
man.
we were the only 3 people walking that day, I believe. It wasn't until
Yeah.
a day or 2 later that
Yeah.
some other people came.
And the helicopter just flew over 2 people in quads. So yeah, it was pretty cool. So yeah, that was with Matt's stream. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Preston. I appreciate you joining us and not being afraid to share some personal stories with us. It was really interesting, and definitely want you to come back and join us on regular show and tells where you're not the special child. Okay.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Always
joining us.
Congratulations on your
welcome,
new purchase.
Thanks.
That's a nice specimen you've got there.
Yeah, one
Thank you
wonderful
very
stone.
much.
We're getting into a little bit of show and tell now about, we've been discussing about creating provenance, because kind of the knee-jerk reaction in the meteorite community is when you ask about provenance of a piece, you're asking about where it came from. I got it from X dealer, I got it from that dealer. But we're trying to expand our minds and think about other ways you can create provenance or proof of your meteorite. So I have a really super special meteorite in my collection. It's this little end cut right here, but it's off of a very important meteorite to me. This is Chandler. I am a meteorite dealer who lives in Chandler, Arizona. This was a single stone, 350 grams. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the story in a second, but I have 2 little videos to show first. I'm extremely fortunate to hold in my hand the main mass of Chandler. This is not mine, but luckily a friend of mine, Bill Pretlow, sorry, is the owner of this and made a small slice available to me. But here is the main mass of a single stone fall in Chandler, Arizona, my hometown. Thank you very much, Bill. I really appreciate you helping me out with this in my collection. And then, so that's the main mass.
Mhm.
And here's what I did to it. So I'm trying to create a chain of evidence that's unquestionable of where this little end cut of a meteorite came from. So I have some of the communication between 2 very important people. You'll notice one of them named Lawrence Garvey.
Mhm.
Lawrence Garvey is a classifier of this meteorite. He was a curator at the Center for Meteorite Studies, now the Busick Center. One day he's out walking his dog on the end of a cotton field and kicks a rock and realizes that's not a rock, that's a meteorite. So a world famous to us meteorite classifier happened to kick a rock and realize it's a meteorite. And that helped me get this because I heard about this story. So here's some correspondence between Lawrence and also Bill. So it basically says, I bought the main mass from Chandler, found 10 miles from your house. And then he replies, I wish I never sold it, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah.
So here's kind of the provenance I put together on that. I was able to get an in situ picture of the rock after it was kicked. Then I have the sales receipt from the original dealer to Bill right here. And I created a letter that says, basically this is the main mass. It was cut in front of me. And it restates all of the facts that I think are important to the provenance of this piece are clearly stated in this letter, and Bill signed it. I put my personal collection ID number on it, give it a COA. It has now been fully documented. And
Awesome.
that's how I created provenance for that piece. So let me
And-
show it off
and-
real quick.
Chain of custody along the bottom of your COA there too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So let me show it off real quick. Go. So this is
Nice.
my end cut of Chandler.
Nice. You're a
Not
very
a-
lucky man.
Not a
Yeah.
very widely held meteorite.
That's nice crust.
Yeah, it's actually a beautiful meteorite. I'm not trying to like sell it to myself or anything. I got it. I'm like, oh, that's actually a nice meteorite.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, I
you're a very
got-
lucky man.
Yeah.
How many
I'm
people have a
super-
piece that was found near their house?
Yeah, and I love the whole
Yeah.
backstory too. Found by a meteorite classifier. Yeah, and then
That's
it
just
wasn't
great.
available for over a decade. And trust me, Bill did not want his rock to go under the saw at first.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
But Bill, if you're watching this, you made a serious collector seriously happy. So thank you again, Bill. I appreciate it. Well, in case you have any question about what provenance is and why it matters, it's time for Meteorite 101 with Mike Kelly. Mike, impress us as always, my man.
Certainly. Thanks, Topher. So we already had a lot of great stuff in this show. So some of this will be a little bit repetitive and I'll gloss it over a little bit. And some of the other stuff we haven't talked about yet. And so I'll deep dive it a little more. So I wanted to start with the definition of provenance. And it's kind of got two facets to it. The first one is determining the origin or earliest known history of an object. And so why is that really important in meteoritics? Well, in meteoritics, we didn't always believe that rocks fell from the sky.
Mhm.
So documenting early meteorites, especially old historical meteorites, was very important to turning meteoritics from a fringe thought into a hard science. So provenance is at the core of meteoritics. The second definition is kind of more like what we touched on, what most people think of nowadays, and that's the chain of custody. It's tracking the ownership of a piece of a meteorite or a whole meteorite all the way back, and that gives you a guarantee that it is authentic and is what it's supposed to be. So we focus a lot more on the latter nowadays, but like it's been brought up already, it's really important to have all these extra details that, like Roberto said, adds great value to the piece, not just who owned it.
Mhm.
So some aspects of provenance, again, like we were discussing with Preston's piece, having a written account from the finder is a great piece of provenance. Again, that can come with institute photos, the GPS coordinates. Not only that, which are two great things that Roberto talked about, but to have something that you can tie to an item, such as let's say that meteorite went through a roof like San Filomeno, and you have a bit of the tile with scratch marks on it to go along with the piece with corresponding scratch marks. Those physical objects can also be proof of the piece you're holding being a part of a special aspect of that fall. So a Gazarchus, there's hundreds to low thousands of pieces, right? But only a few are hammers, and some of those have green paint on them from penetrating roofs. So that's a
Mhm.
sure bit of information to know that you have a part of that piece there. So it's always great to not only record things with documentation, but to also have other physical reminders of the provenance of a piece.
Yeah, if you have a piece that hit a car and has red paint on it, that is very valuable and very provable.
Yes, exactly. So there's those eyewitness accounts and the provenance that ties into that first part of the definition, all the way back to the origin of the piece. And then there's that second part that we were talking about that a lot of folks focus on, which is the kind of documents you collect along the way. And sometimes those are just as valuable or even more valuable than the material itself. Again, like Roberto was saying, that all adds to the physical value that collectors place on a piece. So different things that can add value along the way would be sitting in a museum collection. And I got a couple of the major museums listed in there that, people are always on the hunt for specimens that have ID cards or Topher mentioned bills of sale or deaccession paperwork from museums. And likewise, same thing with the next one down, which is universities. So the major university collections, it's always great to have a piece that you can spend time in a university. And usually they have catalogs where you can go back through and you can look at your piece by mass or by catalog number on the piece as it was in that university. Not much different from the universities and museums or spending time in a major collection. So again, any of the big influential collectors of the past, pieces that have their numbers or their provenance to go along with the piece will always be a little more cherished and a little more valuable than necessarily an exact same piece from the fall that doesn't have any of that support information to go along with it.
Mhm.
And then the second to last thing I have on there is pieces that were used for scientific publications or research. And so that piece of Salt Lake, Great Salt Lake, is a great example of that. That's a piece that is from the stone that the type specimen was cut off of. So again, that's going to be a published piece. So it's got a little more story behind it than necessarily some of the other pieces of that fall. And it makes it special. And then the last thing I have on the list is any piece that has an odd story along the way. So there's been folks whose meteorite collection was in a car and their car caught on fire and there was damage to certain pieces. And, there's pieces that after they've been found and were in collections, like Hurricane Katrina went through and you lost the majority of something like New Orleans.
Mhm.
And so the bits that are left that survive that gain a little value and a little more story behind them based on those oddities that occurred to them.
That's fantastic. And I want everyone to stay tuned for next week. We're going to have Roberto come back and he's going to give us examples of a lot of this supporting documentation and provenance from his personal collection. So Mike is going through the reasons and what it is and why it exists. And next week, Roberto's going to show us a little bit of his examples. Mike, back to you, man.
Things that support chain of custody. This is just a list of the things. We're all used to COA cards, like Topher showed on his card with Chandler. It's great not just to have your information on there, but to physically track the full chain of custody if you can do it. And so you had a complete chain written on the bottom of your card. Where you put that doesn't really matter if it's on the card, but you should record it somewhere. And one of the things I wanted to talk about kind of as a sidebar is provenance isn't necessarily only about, the support and the extra value it provides you. It really belongs to the piece. And what we're doing as collectors is we're taking custody of these pieces temporarily because, unless you have a really bad case of Lorenzite, they should all outlast us as collectors. So you not only want to record everything, you want to make sure it's accessible and it can be passed on when a piece finally does leave your collection one way or the other. Bills of sales, we talked about, those are great pieces of information because they track things like the value of the meteorite at the time. So it provides some interesting snapshots. And as pieces go from collection to collection to collection, you can see how prices fluctuated and other bits of interesting side information, kind of makes us all wish we were collecting back in the early 80s, when Allende was cheap and plentiful. And, it changes your view of the piece as you see how the value changed as it moved hands over time. Copies of museum catalogs are great. Again, it's awesome to be able to take your piece and look at where it was at when it was in a museum, and it's been well documented. They're usually very well documented with lots of details in there. And so that's important. Monograms are something we haven't really talked about. So a monogram is it's a standalone document for a single find or single fall. So it's basically a small booklet put together to capture all aspects of it. And some of them are really detailed past the point of just the finds. So some of them will have in there the secondary purchases from some of those original finds. So you can track your piece back not only to the original find, but then also how it was cut up and put out into the collection market. So monograms, if they're available, are always a great thing to have. A lot of times they're chock full of pictures too. So if you're lucky, the piece you have will also be a piece that's pictured in the monogram. And again, that's great provenance.
And Mike, I'll just interject for 1 second because monogram was something I was not familiar with until I was putting the slide deck together, and I realized, oh my gosh, I actually have several. And Sue is going to show us one for Conception Junction, an American palisite, in the show and tell after the 101.
Certainly, yeah, yeah. And Dave Giesling is a great guy, a great collector, and again, it adds value to that piece that he put those things together. You know, it shows a lot of time and effort into
Yes.
giving the respect the meteorite deserves. So moving on down, correspondence again. Talked a little bit about that with Preston's piece. It's great if you can get correspondence from the finder. Correspondence can also be helpful for just getting additional pieces. And I'll do show and tell a week after this one, but I got an interesting story where correspondence shows the power of provenance to add into your collection, not just what's already there.
Nice.
A little teaser for next week.
Yeah.
Research papers are always great, especially if you're hard into the science behind the meteorites. You know, having a piece that was actually used in research is always great to add a little sentimental value to what you own. Again, photographs are awesome. Not just necessarily photographs of the pieces, but sometimes even photographs of the event. And Roberto touched on, you know, documenting things via photographs in the field and also finders notes in the field. But you can also get notes from witnesses on the actual event, and tying back to that original provenance importance. You know, those eyewitnesses, even if they're not about a find, but about just the Bolide event, is very important and great details to capture.
Yeah.
And the last one on the list is something that we really don't talk about a whole lot, but you touched on it a little bit, and you actually recorded and documented that with your Chandler, cut planning. So it's great to be able to nail down your piece of a meteorite from the larger piece that it came off of. I know this always comes up as an issue with provenance, especially when you get into like the things that I collect, which are a lot of micros and stuff. Keeping track of what piece that came off of and tying it back to larger pieces that can be tied back to the main mass is a great piece of provenance. Because again, as these things get smaller and smaller, there's no reason there shouldn't be tracking on where it came from, who it came from, what size piece it was. And there's no reason that breakdown into smaller collection pieces, so it's more widely available to the market, should have any effect on provenance.
I'm so glad you're bringing those points up. Great explanation. If you look at this, where is it here? This one, this started out as 146 grams. My piece is only half a gram, but the provenance followed the piece all the way from the museum to me.
Exactly. So you could track as a downsize the whole way. So other things, I touched on the hammered artifacts a little bit already, so I'll really focus on the top one, which is original packaging. So some great pieces are out there that are sitting in their original museum boxes. I remember at the Tucson show last year, there was a box of old Sokotoline from the Russian Academy of Science sitting in a Russian Academy of Science box. It's still the original box that has been sitting in the whole time since it got deassessed, which is just amazing to have that to go along with the piece, you know?
Yeah.
Please tell me you got that box. I went back to try and get it and it was gone.
No, I figured the person who bought the bulk of that material at the very end got that box. So unfortunately, no, I don't. But I did take the time to take a snapshot of that box to keep it with my pieces as part of the provenance.
There you go.
So even if you don't have original labels, label copies are also a great thing to have. You know, it's better than having nothing. And it's usually good to mark the back of the label as copy, so it's very apparent to keep your documentation clean and organized. So don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, like I said, we're doing these pieces justice by gathering this information. It's great to have as a collector, but it really belongs to the piece, and it's what you're doing to maintain that as a historical record, not just for you, but for everybody else later on. So a lot of times things will get sold, and if you don't ask the question, it'll just get sold with a COA card with that current dealer on it, and that's all the information you'll have. And the longer you wait, the harder it'll be to get that information backtracked. So, I mean, just today I had a piece that was a car smasher, Warden, and I had only the COA card from the person I got it from. And on my way back home today, I was able to find out who they got it from, and the fact that person had bought the entire mass from the original house owner. So I now have closed off the chain of custody on that piece. Whereas before that, I just had a card with a COA from the last person I bought it from.
Wow. That's exciting.
Yeah. And then the kind of the last thing about that is there is a balancing act too. I kind of have this last statement on there. Sometimes, the person you buy it from they're a dealer, right? Likely may still be buying material from the person that they got it from, and may not initially want to release the name, which is respected a lot of times in the industry because they're still actively procuring from that source. So don't be afraid to circle back later on. If that's the case, it's just they should be honest about it. Hey, listen, I don't feel comfortable releasing that right now. Sometimes it's not even buying. I've bought pieces before where it was from a recently deceased collector, someone who had passed on, and out of respect for that family, the dealer was like, I'm not putting that information out right now, which is all well and good, and I respect that. I kind of have a tipping point at some point later on where I think, well, we got to do those pieces justice too. So after a certain amount of time, I'm always willing to go back and ask, and hopefully the answer is, well, this is who it came from. So we can now close that chain of custody and get the justice done to that piece, so the full history can be known.
That's awesome. I'm glad you point that out, man.
Yeah. And then finally, this is not on the provenance itself. This is all about, being organized, being able to find what you have on a piece, being able to sort through it quickly so you can access it. It's always great to have a digital copy of things. It's physical things can happen. A building can flood. There can be, heaven forbid, a fire, and you could lose data. If it's on the cloud, then it's safe and stored somewhere else and it's redundant. So it's always good to have digital records for both security and also for speed of looking things up. And then as far as the physical aspect goes, when I started out, I had like a shoebox full of cards. And so that's not really easy to go through. And it's not well organized to find what you have, what pieces of provenance relate to each other if you have multiple pieces for the same item. So I got organized. I started a binder up. I used the little business size cards all go into 9 card sheets for collector's cards. Some of the dealers like the larger format COA cards. So I got postcard holders behind that, and then I got full sheet binder pages behind that. So everything can be well organized, and I got 2 books with every document I have on every meteorite, all in order based on their catalog number. Last thing on that slide is labels. So obviously you never want a collection mix up. As your collection grows, you may start out and be able to memorize all your pieces, but as you get more and more addicted to meteorites, it quickly overcomes most people from being able to memorize everything. So I'm all about having pieces labeled. I'm a big fan of the old school way of labeling pieces. So if you look at the classic collections, they were all numbered, usually hand numbered on the piece, or they had a little bit of label tape on them, cloth tape that was glued on. Again, you can't ever mix up what piece number it is when it's physically on the piece. Whereas if you're labeling cases and things like that, there's potential that if you take multiple things out, you could have mix-ups. So even if you don't go down to the label the piece level, definitely have your cases labeled, because nothing hurts more than having a rock from space in your collection that you're scratching your head going, what is this?
Oh yeah. Oh, the ultimate nightmare. Like, God, I thought I knew what this was. Mike, thank you very, very much. Week in and week out, your 101s are very educational and entertaining. You deliver the information in a way that a lot of people enjoy to consume. So thank you very much for teaching us.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you.
Very good stuff, Michael. Thank you.
What we're scoping out here is my 80-gram slice of Conception Junction. It's a palisite from America. And the reason I'm showing this is because I have a monogram to go with it. Sue, tell us about this monogram, if you don't mind.
Yes, I just learned that is the official word for it. I believe one of our ads for these say booklet. So I'm learning every day. So we actually have procured a few of these, and I believe we have 2 left. So the booklet is something that, or the monogram is something, it's an item of provenance that is informational, obviously. And some of these, when they're really old, they're very highly sought after. And a lot of them are just limited editions because they weren't necessarily, bound as like official books. Some of these are, stapled together with cardstock type paper. So this one in particular was for the Conception Junction Palisade, which was found in Missouri, I believe. And it was written by the late Dave Giesling. So this book is, and so I did a little bit of research into it because I wanted to find out some information, and the way that it was written just kind of intrigued me. It didn't seem like, totally normal. So I looked into it, and
We're
I
on
found out.
page 130 right now.
Yeah, it starts on 130. I'm like, what is with this? And so I'm like, Topher, what is this? He's like, it's a book. I'm like, okay. So, I start reading into it, and it's, he wrote this monogram in the style of a work that he was inspired by, the Taney County Meteorite. And that was authored by George F. Coons from the American Journal of Science, dating back to 1887. That Taney County Meteorite, it was later renamed as a Mincy. So Dave Giesling's book starts like on, was it 130 or 124 or something?
124, yeah.
Yeah, 124. So it's in a similar fashion to the excerpted monographs from the Mincy report. So this was Dave's way of kind of like paying homage to George Coons' work, since it's the same number of pages as the number of years that had passed since the time that Coons and Giesling had both submitted the meteorite reports. So, unfortunately, Dave did pass away a few years ago, but, his love and his passion for meteorites live on through his work. So that makes it this a highly collectible item. So I thought that was really cool when I looked it up, because I never would have guessed all of that information, that like, why is it starting on page 124 and, all of that. So I thought it was interesting.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. I appreciate that.
That's
I
really neat.
told you it was going to be a long episode and we need to cut it in half. We are cutting it here. Join us in a week. Well, join us and you'll see the second half later. Thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Bye now.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Check, microphone check, check.